In case you missed it, there's a Kingdom Rush Vengeance update, and guess what? It's actually awesome. 3 challenging levels, a new tower, and a new hero. What do they look like? Oh, well, this. But I'm gonna go with something a little more fitting.
Look at the sky.
Now, somebody made a really good comment, kind of summarizing some of the really important differences that make Primal Ravage so much better than almost all the other levels, especially all of the post-game as it's been updated over the past couple years. We got all the frog levels, and the first one is certainly challenging and refreshing for veterans like me that like to get their booty handed to them on a silver platter regularly with extra black pepper. One of the overarching themes that I notice with all of these new levels is that they try to kind of nerf and balance all of the meta. What do I mean by that? Well, a lot of these enemies are anti-barrack, so you're not as easily able to spam Dark Knights, Elite Harassers, or even many of the combo towers. Because of these new enemies, the Velociraptors specifically, you have to pay attention to the minions that you have on your field. That's right, most of them are just not up to par anymore. Why is that? Well, it's because these Velociraptors have high damage, a minimum of like 25 per attack. They're so fast, so they're hard to keep track of. They hatch out of these little breeding grounds, which if you didn't prepare in advance for, are probably going to surprise you and you're going to lose a few hearts off the bat. So you definitely want to build your towers toward the rear of these levels, pretty much almost always if you want to be safe. But these Velociraptors breed off of every time they kill one of your soldiers. So Orc Warrior Den, you're going to die kind of a lot here, even though there's 3 of you. So unless they're maxed out, they're probably just not going to be strong enough almost ever. And why spend your gold on something that's just a staller rather than something that's a main, big AoE or high DPS tower, right? So because of the breeding grounds that these savage Velociraptors unleash all over your soldiers, your reinforcements aren't that good anymore because they just don't do a lot of damage and they get eaten up and turned into eggs. Pretty cool, huh? Same thing happens with a lot of these guys. It can even happen probably a bit with lower level bone flingers. Now, I've only heard that, but I have not seen it yet. Obviously here, in this challenge and this attempt, this mini-series of 3 episodes, or 4, trying to decide what's a good spammable tower. Obviously, harassers and bone flingers would be the best things. Heck, even Blazing Gem would probably fare pretty well. You know, you don't have any blocking with that, but that's besides the point. I wanted to spam some non-meta towers. So I immediately went to, well, what's the best, good tower that's not just like game-breaking or anything, but would have the most potential? Because I already tried using Swamp Thing. My Shreks didn't cut it. And I thought that they might, but they just fire too slow, and then they all end up using their huge range to always be throwing backwards, thus doing a lot of overkill damage, all trying to hit that same 1 or 2 enemies that are darting toward the exit, while ignoring everything else. I have to admit, my setup on that last video, you know what I'm talking about, was not that great. I should have spread them out more and put some Shreks toward the front and stuff, but even having a mixture of melee and long-range Shreks doesn't seem good enough, because melee Shrek can only block 1 enemy at a time. It can only stun an AoE of enemies when it's completely maxed out with its stunnage, which has invested a ton of gold at that point. And by that point, you already need some archer support, because guess what? There's not just ground enemies of Velociraptors to deal with. No, that's just there to make your barracks and all of your ally units be eaten alive, and so that you have to pay attention to more to what's going on, upgrading your towers before they get eaten and turn into eggs and then bred and hatched into new Velociraptors. No, we got pterodactyls introduced too. These guys are really nice. They're pretty similar overall, in my opinion, to all of the blue wyverns that you get on the snow levels in the main campaign. The blue wyverns on Impossible have a lot of HP, and I think they're a bit slower than these pterodactyls. So these pterodactyls have more of like a medium speed, a little bit less HP, but enough HP where they're not just being massacred every single second they enter the screen, like you would see with the hunting eagles, which are very prevalent in the last third of the campaign. You see them first, I believe, on Otil Farms, and they're very underwhelming. They're fast, but they have like... when you have like 30 HP, it just doesn't even matter. You can kill those guys just by relying on the splash damage of your artillery. That's not even targeting directly the flyers. So all that is to say, another awesome thing of this update is the wonderful introduction of a mixture of enemies. And we already talked about velociraptors and how they make all of your ally units a bit nerfed. We're talking about our frickin' flying pterodactyls and how they mean that, well, now you gotta have an archer, but I'm trying to take it a step further and play it on Impossible, choose one tower type, which is why I obviously went with the Devil's Reef, the fish towers. They're doing great. They got physical damage and magic damage. You know, their net ability can be kind of counterproductive, and their magic cloud dealing thing doesn't really seem phenomenal, but it's there in case you want to do it. But overall, everything's going swimmingly. This tower seems great, guys. It's crazy. I mean, like, we're also using Danyan, and he's really good. He's the best support, like, in the entire game, probably. The next best would probably be Junpei. But this guy can slow. He gives you all that passive extra gold. I don't know how much it is by the end of, the round. If it's only one per guy and you're only going to kill maybe like a few hundred guys, it's like, okay, that's like a level 2 tower that you'll have generated an extra gold by the end of the thing. It's kind of hard to know. But he has good stunnage, slowing every time he hits him with his lightning clouds. It's awesome, guys. And on this level, as you'll notice in the bottom right, we have our prehistoric dwarves. These guys are awesome. They're really good to be using insta-kills on, but we don't have that with this tower. So we're just relying on blocking and not encountering enough of them all spammed at once. I do start upgrading my nets a little bit just to get a little bit of stunnage going, because look at this. I got, 5 of these prehistoric big hammer guys all at once, and Dian Young does great at stalling them. They're tough. They wipe through your soldiers. They pretty much kill everything in like 1 to 2 hits. Luckily, our fish boys are pretty beefy, and you can upgrade their stats and everything, so that works out swimmingly, you could say. So far, so good. This update pretty much has everything. It makes you rethink all of your towers. Except for Bone Flingers and Blazing Jam, which are always good no matter what.